agenda. We could do an off Wednesday as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
That would work. I just was putting forth ideas on the table, so
Or we could, the meeting would end, if you want to do it after, we could do it.
that's what I meant.
And
like,
you go
as a
into the
separate-
evening, or you could do it maybe at 3 o'clock on another Wednesday, and then you could have whatever time without having any other items. I mean, that's an option.
And how do we notify the planning commission members without violating any rules? Because we would probably have to have some back and forth to see, because we would like all 7 to be there.
And in terms of finding a specific date to do it.
Yeah, we gotta start with finding a specific date for all 7.
So if there's a specific date or dates, we could email all the council or planning commissions, like a doodle poll or whatever, to find out which one everybody can line up with.
Well, let's have it come through Jay's plate.
Does it have to come through you, or can Madeline message?
Either way, I mean, if you guys want to do it, and then let us know, so we can, because we're gonna have to make sure we.
Like your schedule has to work too, so I think I would like coming from them and saying, hey, what are these, then it's official and it's within the city.
Because all 7 are gonna have to do the poll to see which
Yeah.
date, and then we'll, if we don't get them, we'll have to pick some other dates. And see. We could propose multiple dates, we could do one on, 6 o'clock, or whatever, after the regular meeting, or we could do the following, or a couple following meetings if there's no other meeting, other than the study session, we could do that as well.
See, I was wondering if Madeline should do it, iron down a couple of dates, and then approach you to see how it works with your schedule, so that there's not a ton of.
This hits some of the open record stuff.
On something like this, when you're just trying to do some coordination issues and you're not discussing anything substantive dealing with the transportation, that would be okay. But it also would work to, everybody could send us some of your suggested times that you could come, and then we would do a do you use doodle polls for, and that's one of the best ways, because then you come on and you can see when you can actually come in, but we shouldn't be talking any substantive issues. It's just merely a coordination of times.
It just seems to me that Hasten is the hard one to work around, that he should get first choice of dates, I guess.
So
We're fine with that. What we'd like to do is, once we have this meeting, whenever it is, then we'll schedule
Yeah.
a regular hearing with the planning commission.
got it. Okay, so I guess the idea, let's take 2 minutes and what kind of dates are we looking at? Or do we just want to purely do it over the? Because we're off next week.
So the 2nd is a regular meeting, then you have the 9th,
And then
16th is a regular, and then 23rd, 30th.
I think you should reach out to Hasten
Okay.
first and see when he is around.
Okay.
He was supposed to be here today.
Yeah, because he might find evenings a little easier. Because he's got quite a few businesses.
If we do evenings, do we want it directly after our regularly scheduled?
Wednesdays are probably the preferred day, because we have council on Tuesdays. Other meetings typically on Thursdays, so Tuesday or Wednesday's a better day for us.
So either an off or after. I think that's fair.
We could do it before, but then we run into the timeline of making sure we hit the,
Well, and evenings are a burden to you because you already worked your regular day.
that's fine.
So it drags into the evening, so.
I think we will do whatever it takes to. make sure
Well,
you guys-
sometimes if we put it at the end, it can drag into the morning.
Yeah.
It may not be a bad thing to do.
We have to
We'll have
start
a
by
hard
11
lineup.
p.m.
Just put a hard stop.
Hard stop, 11 p.m.
Yeah, I
I think it's better to do an off meeting,
Ninth.
because I think it could get too long otherwise.
I agree, in general, I agree. But if the goal is to have all 7 of us, Hazel can only do after, then that's.
Absolutely.
So we're probably really looking at doing the dates in August. Yes, I think next week's too soon. So last we're about August dates. Okay. Then are we good starting there? Okay. All right. Do you like to do some training?
Sure. Training with planning commission, there's so many legal issues, we can spend hours and days on certain items, so it's pretty high level. And so now we'll just kind of go through some things. If you have a question, let's ask if we can do this routinely, every so often, or as issues and items come up that you have interest in, we can dig more into that particular issue. So often with, what's this?
Hit that ad.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oops. Okay, so you're on the planning commission, now what? It's an appointed body, it's required by state law, and one of the most important things you do is ultimately recommend policy changes to the council and your citizen planners. But the question always comes up, what isn't the planning commission? And the planning commission is not an elected body. Planning commission is not the policy maker. You recommend policy. And you don't represent a constituency. You're not an elected official. The system is designed for citizen planners to come in and get together and discuss things and then make recommendations to elected officials who will ultimately make that policy question. Now, we all do different things. We all have different hats and different things that we deal with. And so what we do, the planning commission, you got two main emphasis. One is legislative and one is administrative. And they're two very different animals, and you perform and do very different things depending on the context that you're in. And so legislative, put the construction hat there because you're creating law, you're making law and policy ultimately. And administrative, it's more of the traffic cop. It's more of not creating something, but administering what already exists. So administrative, you're the final decision maker in some types of things, subdivisions, a project plan, conditional use. Now legislative, you're not the final decision maker. You act in this advisory capacity and you give recommendations and advice ultimately to the council. That might be like a zoning map amendment or text amendments to the actual text. General plan, other items like the transportation master plan, that's a policy recommendation. Administrative, you have very narrow discretion in which you can operate and the basis upon which you can make a decision. It's very constrained by state law. And you can't be arbitrary, capricious, or illegal. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And no public clamor. Public clamor is a term of art that case law uses quite a bit. And what it means, especially in the administrative context. And decisions have to be supported by substantial evidence in the record. It's that type of evidence beyond just a mere scintilla of evidence. It's got to be something that a reasonable mind would look and accept as evidence that can support the decision. It has to be there, it has to be real. And ultimately, you decide yes or no. Does the project comply? Yes. Or does it not comply with code? Then the answer is no. Now, public clamor. Oftentimes you have people come in and they don't have evidence. It's public clamor. They're upset about something and they don't like it in public comment. Oftentimes planning commissions will have a requirement by their city code to, on an administrative item, have an actual public hearing.
We went to it.
It's a public hearing, and the real question is, does it comply with law? Does it comply with our code or not? It doesn't matter whether you like the project or not. It matters if it complies with the code. And so somebody coming in and saying, I don't like this, or if you approve this, our favorite one is children will die. If you approve this one, that doesn't really matter. The question is, does it comply with the code? Now, administratively, the Supreme Court has said, look, opposition, you can weigh it, but it cannot be the sole basis to make a decision. Just because I've seen planning commissions where they've literally said, the chair said, okay, everybody in favor of this, sit over here. Everybody not in favor or opposed, sit over here. That's not a good idea. That looks like you're just voting based on whether people like a project or not. And in an administrative context, you just can't do it. Now, legislative. Let's talk about similar things. What type of discretion do they have? Very wide discretion. The question is it fairly debatable? Should we change the rezone? And public sentiment is really important. So now, if an ordinance could promote the general welfare, or even if it's just reasonably debatable that it could promote the general welfare, the Supreme Court will uphold it. So very broad discretion in policy questions. And so now in the administrative context where it's public clamor, now it's our friends and neighbors giving input on what is appropriate. So the same type of comments in an administrative context, which would be public clamor, in a legislative policy-making endeavor are very important, and you can take a lot of notice of, and those kind of comments are important to know and understand. And unfortunately, sometimes in our meetings and what we do, people don't understand that we're having an administrative hearing and they don't like it, and the decision goes contrary to their wishes, and now they're frustrated and mad because you didn't listen to us. When the reality is, legally, we have to follow the law. Not that we don't care what's
So administrative is just following established protocol policy.
Yeah, because administrative,
It's black and white. I mean, it should be. I'm sure sometimes it's not quite that clear, but
yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of discretion and judgment involved.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's fairly clear, in a subdivision, do they have the appropriate setbacks?
Yeah.
If it's a 10-foot setback, it's a 10-foot setback. And there may be a great reason to have a larger setback. But if it's not in the code, you cannot require it. And so that's why, with legislative, I put the construction hat, because we're building what the ordinance is. And administrative, it's really kind of the traffic cop hat. We're just dealing with the laws that exist and applying it.
So for sake of our meeting today, our first item is administrative. And we do have a public hearing with it, but it's administrative. And the final two items, and we're the final decision on, that's where the end of the line for them. For the next two items for 3.2 and 3.3, they're legislative. So we switch hats for those ones. I'm just using that, sorry, to
No,
step on, but I'm just using that to kind of give you context. So like when we're doing plats and stuff like that, or we're recommending to the city council, it makes a big difference.
And some discussion you might want to have about when it is a purely administrative item. Do we really want to have a public hearing? State law does not require it. But frequently the public gets very frustrated because it's okay, we're opening it up to a public hearing, and then somebody comes in and says, look, I don't like this development coming in because they're going to be looking down into my backyard, and that really makes us nervous, and this is not right. And the setback should be greater, but we can't do anything about it. And then when it gets approved, they're very upset saying, you don't listen to us.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe what we need to do is spend more time dealing with the ordinances and putting in more protection, because now those type of comments or concerns are very important about how we deal with the ordinances and how we create them in the future. So that's, Madeline, thank you for bringing that up, because that's the perfect context. You know, it's easy to talk about these in a vacuum, but to have that as an actual example to think about.
I think that, making this more transparent would solve some of the public clamor.
It
Because
might.
at our last meeting, we definitely had public clamor. And I mean, the situation was legal, but wrong. It should never have been rezoned by a past city council. But none of them ever remember getting any of these. They probably did, but they didn't understand what was going in. And I think if this had been more clear, I think we could have stopped the problem at the beginning instead of dealing with it at the end.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And so as a planning commission, those are the types of things that as you see coming along, as citizen planners, what would help the rest of the residents of Orem understand and have better information so that we can balance the technical legal requirements that we need for noticing, but with being more user-friendly so that people understand and we can deal with those issues. So that's a great observation.
But even with the legislative end of it, we are not elected. We do not set the policy. We make recommendations that goes to those that are elected to finally make the determination as to whether this can happen or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and so with legislative, kind of this idea of comment is, I have this little graphic in here because I like to say this is planning commission. And the planning commission members, you're at the very top of the mountain here. And you have neighbors who have a perspective somewhere on this. You've got staff, and we make a recommendation to you. You've got a business owner, you've got a UDOT, you've got all these people making recommendations to you. And ultimately, you hold a public hearing, you listen to all of this input, and then you make a recommendation. And then I need to have another graphic where there's another mountain that's a little taller, and at the top of that is the city council. And planning commission will make a recommendation. And hopefully the city council takes the planning commission's recommendation seriously, and staffs and the residents, and then weighs and balances all of those competing interests to ultimately determine what the policy is, how we do it on time.
You got
Keep me,
2 minutes.
okay, I only have like 40 more slides to go.
Excellent.
So,
Next time.
so it's administrative, now talking about the applicant coming in, their expectations, and they have some rights. So administrative, it's that I have a vested right, that if I've made a complete application, paid my fee, then my request complies with law, it's gonna be granted. Unless there's a countervailing public interest, which is extremely hard to have, or there's some sort of pending legislation that could go in the council, it's on an agenda, it's in front of the planning commission and council, and the law might be changed. That could mitigate their expectation. And as a land use authority, we have to apply the plain language of the land use regulations. Now, legislative, their legal expectation, none. They don't have a right to have the law be the way that they're requesting.
Despite what they may say to us in the meetings.
And they have no vested right. Okay. Administrative, the policy question, that's really tricky. There is no policy question. It's really, what are the ordinance requirements? And does this application comply? So municipal zoning authorities, we're bound by the terms of our standards of our applicable zoning codes. And we can't make a land use decision that's in derogation of those codes. Legislative, policy question, great questions. What should the property be zoned? I don't know, it's pretty debatable. What should it be? Is this the right zone? What should the law be? What should the standards be? How high should buildings be allowed? What should the setbacks be? How much landscaping should we have? All of those types of things. How do we want Orem to look? How do we want it to function and operate? Are we out of time?
Yeah, we need to adjourn.
Okay.
Are you almost done with that slide?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so there's, maybe every, other meeting or something, you come in and go over a little bit
I would
more.
really like that to have a consistent,
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
and then if there's any questions about something that's come up here, call me, email me, something like that, and I can go into a little more depth about a legal issue dealing with land use.
I have a question.
Yeah,
What is the update from a month ago with the people in the gas station? What has happened on that?
That's on August 1st, to the council.
Because that's the next step.
They've actually agreed to. And they've relocated dumpsters. Last day.
Let's adjourn to the other room.
thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of stuff. Yeah, so there are some things that I actually want to sit down with you and maybe go through some of those things. Yeah, because it's just so. Oh,
A lot of them are state code or state.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So we got all.
Yeah, heads up, I got just not the email. They were upset because after the meeting, the developer decided to pivot based on their comments and people another meeting before the time. So, heads up. So, their neighborhood meeting originally was because they wanted to retirement homes. Based on the comments at the meeting, the developer I guess decided to pivot and move to the single family, they were letting each homes. Move to single family homes for their students
Is that right?
and didn't hold another neighborhood meeting. And so,
That's the substance of the law right now, they're only required to hold one, right?
Yeah, it will require one, but a rezone is their discretion. Don't have to. Yeah. Can't find my emergency top, but I keep a jacket and tie in the office, it's at the one.
Yes, it was a whole city council.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order and begin our planning commission meeting for tonight. Jerry will give the invocation.
Our Father, which art in heaven, we are grateful this day for thy many blessings. We are grateful for this beautiful city in which we live and the freedoms we enjoy. We pray as we meet this day as a planning commission that we might be blessed with wisdom and that we might be guided in making proper decisions that benefit the city and the people thereof. We pray that as we go about this business, that we might be respectful of one another and of each other's opinions, and that we might work out differences in a civil manner. And these favors and blessings we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Item 3.1.
So 3.1 is a vacation of Miller Park, Plat A. It's in a current one lot subdivision. They're wanting to vacate that and create 2 lots. In addition to that, they're going to create a site plan called Boulder Industrial Park on one of the lots. This is the property in question, 138 South Mountain Way Drive. It's currently zoned C or M2 manufacturing. What they're proposing on lot 1 is to create a 4-unit office warehouse where they'll be able to do things, whether office and then some more housing for industrial type uses. The top portion is part of the site plan. The bottom portion will also be paved with asphalt, but not counted as part of that. So eventually it could be redeveloped into something. So these are the proposal. Lot 1 is on the development. Lot 2 will be the remaining lot. Landscaping complies. They will be putting in new landscaping along both Mountain Way Drive and the street to the north in compliance with the requirements. And then these are the elevations, block with some accented brick as well. This is the current location. You can see it's a vacant lot, no landscaping. So they will be doing that as part of their site work as well. Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve the 2-lot subdivision along with the Boulder Industrial Park site plan. Be glad to address any questions.
Is there any questions from the Planning Commission? Okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to come to the mic and say anything?
I don't have anything particular to add. We're hoping this will improve the area. This has been an asphalted parking lot for years with no landscaping and used by several different people for parking. The hope is now we can build a nice building and improve the lot and improve the area. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions from the commission? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open the meeting for public comments. If you'll come to the mic and state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. So I'll go ahead and open for public comment. Okay, no one's coming forward, so I'll close the public hearing and we will move to discussion and or motion if we're ready. This one's pretty straightforward, so. Do you want to make a motion?
I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council.
Nope. That's not what this one is.
The what? Help me out. with that.
Yes, it doesn't,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll make a
Um,
pop-
We recommend.
We recommend the Planning Commission approve the vacation of Lot 4 of Miller Park, Plat A, and approve the Plat 4 Miller Park, Plat B, and the site plan for Boulder Industrial Park located generally at 138 South Mountain Way Drive in the M2 zone.
And I'll second.
Okay, Mike?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Item 3.2.
Item 3.2 is a rezone of 0.084 acres at 426 East, 1070 South. It is part of the Ranchito site plan, the back portion. They do also own the home that you can see outlined in red. They're proposing to take the back portion of that and rezone that to C2 so they could have some additional parking for their current restaurant. Currently it's zoned R65, which is a residential zone, minimum of 6,500 square feet for the home that's currently located there. So they're proposing to make a 2-lot subdivision or create the 1 lot above and then add that south portion to the restaurant. So proposing to rezone that. Let me just show you here. So an additional 12 lots will be, or excuse me, 12 parking stalls will be installed on the south portion. The lot itself for the existing home will have the minimum requirements. I think it's about 8,000 square feet that they'll end up with. So there'll be a legal lot in the front, and then the back portion, if rezoned to C2, will be part of the parking field for the Mi Ranchito restaurant. This is the existing home that will remain. And then this is the area with the red van in the background that they're wanting to rezone. Any questions that I can address?
Questions from the commission? No? Okay. Is the applicant here? Would you like to make any comments or no? Okay, that's fine. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commission? Good.
Let's see.
Ask your
Let
question.
me ask you a question. I occasionally, with my family, frequent this place, and I think I've seen you before, greeting me when I've gone in, taking my money when I leave. But it's a wonderful restaurant. But the challenge has been just finding a place to park. Yeah, when you go there, when one goes there, then it's always, I'm hoping I'm able to find a place to park. So this, to me, is a good thing that this can be done.
Any further questions or comments?
Somebody has a comment out there.
Oh, I will open it for the public hearing. I do need to do that. So if there's nothing from the commission, then I'll open the public hearing. Same rules as before. Please come to the mic, state your name in 3 minutes.
Can you put up the little colored plan? Dorothy Alborn, I live in this area and I think it's great to have extra parking. But I'm wondering about the orange and the yellow. What's the difference between the two?
So just the size of the parcel. You can see the R6.
No. Taking aside the parking, can we leave the parking for a while? I'm pro for the parking. I live at 458 1010 South.
Yeah, I'm talking about the size of the parcel in the orange and the yellow. So one requires 8,000 square feet, the other requires 6,500 square feet of a home lot.
On those lots.
On those lots. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the minimum square footage.
All right. I'm wondering about the encroachment of the mall on the rest of this neighborhood. Can anyone enlighten me on that?
There's no request that currently that the mall wants to purchase any properties further east. I mean, they have bought some properties within that, but there's nothing in this specific area that I'm aware of that they're doing. They do own these two, the 1080 South and 460 East. I don't know if I can point on this thing. So currently the mall owns this lot and they own this lot. And then they, of course, own this and then the rest of the mall going south. So they do own these two. They're currently zoned residential and they have no intention that to my knowledge, with an application to rezone it at this point. Doesn't mean they won't in the future, but there's nothing in the works.
Okay. With zoning, could they come and go north and take those other 5 plots and buy them up like they have the east side of that neighborhood?
You're talking over here?
Okay, no,
Or above here?
right there.
So I mean, they could, it doesn't say they couldn't buy them, but they, in order to do anything development like the mall, they would have to come to the city council to actually request them to rezone it to a commercial zone.
Okay,
And the coun-
I just don't want a big monster in my backyard like they've
Right.
done next to Cordner's.
Right, and that's going to be up to the whatever council is at the time. If they decide to come forward and request it, they could, like any other property owner could.
And would we in that neighborhood be notified
Oh, absolutely.
of what? Okay,
Absolutely.
that's all I wanted to know, but I'm pro for the parking for the restaurant.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, would you-
I don't really want to say, between those two lots, you just said the mall owns, you got two little lines up there, numbers. What is in the space there?
That was a public street and it's been vacated. So
I just trying to figure out what was between.
yeah.
thanks. All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Any comments, any discussion from the planning commission? Okay. Somebody, should we move for motion? Yeah, when's it?
I make a motion that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council to amend article 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning a portion of the property approximately 0.084 acres located at 426 East, 1070 South from the R6.5 zone to the C2 zone.
I second that. Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Okay, item 3.3.
Item 3.3 is a rezone. They've called it Farm Haven Cottages. They're proposing to change a portion of the property on the backside, which I'll explain here in a minute, to a PRD zone, which is a planned residential development. It's an ordinance that's in place currently in the ordinance. They're not making any amendments to the actual text of the ordinance. They're just wanting to apply the ordinance and the zone to their property in the back. The front portion, which is currently the autistic school, they'll rezone that to a PO, which is a professional office zone, which does allow schools as a permitted use. So that does make sense. It came into the city. It was built in the county when the property was annexed. Time flies, I think it's 5+ years ago when it came into the city. That was put into a OS5 zone, which is a 5-acre zone, which is a holding zone. Typically, the cities have different names, but the city of Orem uses the OS5 as kind of a holding zone, knowing that somebody will come in the future to ask or request for some modification to that zone. So currently it is zoned OS5. What they're proposing is to make the front school portion PO, which is a professional office, and then the back portion, which is over 4 acres, into a PRD, which is a planned residential development. They're proposing to do single family lots, and you can see outlined there. I think there's 23 of them, I believe. 2 of the lots, so 25 total. 2 of the lots will actually be used for off-street parking for visitors. I have a blow up here, and I'll explain this in a minute. What they're proposing to do is have access directly onto Geneva Road, as you can see with the pointer on the screen. And then these will be public streets as it wraps around. Eventually, there will be a public street when the property to the south is developed. There will be a connection into Peyton Crossing, which will then have a direct access to 2000 South in Orem. They also were proposing a secondary access for fire access, which will have knock boxes or whatever the fire department uses to access gates that will be fenced off the playground. So they will have a secondary ability to get in if they need to access a fire for some other, or for whatever reason. So this is kind of a blow up of the proposal. They are single family lots. They're proposing to do 1-story cottages. They may or may not have basements. It depends on the geotechnical report that's reviewed by our city engineer based on each lot. And that is yet to be determined. So they may propose that, but that's determined by a case-by-case, lot-by-lot basis. The average size of the home is, or not home, average size of the lot is between 6,000, a little under that, up to 8,000 square foot lots, 8,600 square foot lots. So this is the traffic pattern. The red indicates the public street portion. The green is the private access that for fire apparatus. These are the proposed one-story cottages that they are proposing. I can just go back and explain a little bit of so you can see the one on the left, the yellow portion is actually on the property to the south. So the owner has given us a letter stating that they will grant them an easement on that property so that the road will be on that. What the city is recommending is that the development agreement be done prior to going to the council, assuring that both property owners sign and then the city has some assurance that that street will be put in with this development. This is, of course, the existing autistic school, which will remain. And then, anyway, any questions that I can address?
Commission, any questions at this point?
You mentioned the properties on the back were going to be rentals. Is that?
And I'll let the property owners address that, but I believe they will be part of the autistic school there. At least the thought that we have from the applicant is that they would rent it to either former students or potentially students that are going to the school.
But they'd all be plotted as individual and could be sold one by one.
They could. It would be a platted subdivision. Yes.
Okay, we will get to the public hearing. We have a few steps first. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward and if there's anything you'd like to say? There.
Well, good evening, commissioners. My name is Paul Washburn. I'm representing the Autism Academy this evening. Purpose for doing this, and just to answer your question, Mr. Carpenter, they are going to be sold, not rented. The reason for doing this is Autism Center has been in business both here and in Salt Lake for a number of years. I think close to 20 years in Salt Lake and 7-8 years here. One of the things, and I'm sure all of you have noticed this now, we're thankfully, because of improvements in medicine, autistic kids are living much longer than they did when I was growing up. It's not infrequent to find parents in their late 40s to 70s still caring for an autistic child in their home. And the intent here was to create a neighborhood specifically for that situation. There's going to be CC&Rs put on the property that is going to explain that that is the use, explain how that is going to happen. But the whole thing here is to be a support center for those kids, particularly with the academy next door. It will provide a better living life for these kids and or I guess adults, a lot of them now, than they've been able to have previously. The owner of the academy, Trish, I grew up with her, may have some additional comments. And
You aged a lot faster than she did. You said you grew up with her?
well,
How can we believe what you say?
She's definitely doing something right.
you probably don't know it, but I'm only 40. It's just living that is doing this for a living that is finished.
I'm 170.
No, thank you for your time today. Yeah, again, quality of life for these adults as they age is so important to me, as I have a 21-year-old with profound autism. This has been a labor of love for us for a lot of years. And so I appreciate your overview of what we can do to help really take care of a population that doesn't have many options at this point. This development is something that's new and exciting to Utah, and it's something that we really want to be able to replicate in other areas of the state as well, in terms of giving compassionate care to individuals on the spectrum and options and opportunities rather than group homes, which are failing our adults on so many levels. So really it's, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone, including my son and those others like him. So thank you.
Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the questions we had was how, the rental versus selling and how it was going to be limited, but you answered that through having CC&Rs. And is that?
I think this is going to be controlled as the way a lot of our other neighborhoods are done. Over the last 40 years that I've been involved in the Orem city government, we've approved a lot of senior housing. Concern was always whether it be overrun by younger people. It never has. It's designed for something else. And I think this is going to be the same thing. Obviously, the CCNR is going to be very clear about what is expected here, the tolerance you need to have. I know neighborhood I lived in before, we had an autistic child in the neighborhood, and for some reason, he loved my porch swing in the backyard. And we knew him, we knew his folks, it never was a problem, but that can be unsettling in some neighborhoods. This is something where people can come together that all have the same similar understanding. And so that's where we're going with it. We have not tried to place a legal restriction on the property. There's a couple of reasons for that. Support comes from a lot of areas. It might be Trish and her husband, but it might be her grandparents too, or whatever that may want to be part of that support group. The other thing we found is as you put more and more heavy restrictions on property, financing becomes very difficult. And we feel that the way we're handling this, it'll be what it's going to be. And we're just excited to move forward if we can get the change in zoning.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the planning?
Yeah,
commission?
I have a question. I don't understand how you intend to keep this just for autistic families if they're going to be sold, because once somebody privately owns it, they can sell it to whomever they want. So, I mean, I think it sounds like a lovely idea in theory, but 10 years from now, will this still be protected for autistic children, or will it have gone on the free market?
It will be, the CCNRs are going to be very, very specific on what this is used for. The ability for kids to have access onto lots maybe that aren't necessarily their own lot. One of the things we're going to do to protect this, and we've done in other neighborhoods, is at closing, we're going to require the new owner to sign the CCRs, and that'll be returned to us. So there's no question about what we're talking about. Obviously, we can't control what will happen in the future, but this is designed for what it's designed for. And I don't see that it's much different than the senior housing that's been approved elsewhere in the city. I've lived in a senior development for the last 22 years. We have had a couple of young families who've moved in for 2 years while their parents were on a mission. They couldn't have been happier to leave. Just the design of the facility, the building, and the way it's, I guess, our old people's structure hasn't invited them to particularly want to stay beyond that. I think this is going to be the same way. We'll move forward. I think the happiest situation that we could come into is 5 or 10 or 20 years in the future, somebody invents a magic pill that cures this. And at that point, maybe it could turn into something else, but I don't see it happening in my lifetime or even Trish's lifetime. I think we're here for a while.
So you mentioned that this is the first of its kind, then. This is plowing new ground. This is not something that's been done elsewhere. So
that's correct. And the foundation that runs the Autism Center, it's a 501c3, it's a nonprofit organization. Anything that happens with this property in terms of sales or whatever, everything goes back into the nonprofit. This isn't your normal development. This is a different deal altogether, and it's the purpose of this is for autistic people. It's not for something else.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Who's going to decide? I mean, are you going to be planning all the houses, or do the owners step forward and have a say?
The homes are going to be designed, it'll probably be 4 different designs. And I think Jason showed those to you earlier. And we're trying to design things that are specific to accommodate people with autism and of course their families. Those will be built. This is not something you're going to be able to come in with your own house plan and build. We've got some water issues on the property. I think what we have designed is probably the optimum of what can be developed on the property.
what would some of the things be that would be unique to autism in terms of the structure itself? What are things that have to be done to accommodate?
I think more than anything, if I'm doing a senior housing project, I start out with a big master bedroom, have an office, maybe something you could put a fold down bed in, and then, large kitchen, great room. I mean, you've seen those plans. all over. When we're looking at an adult autistic child, that second bedroom's got to be a larger bedroom. And it's a bedroom. It's not an office. It's not anything else. That's one of the bigger things that you're looking at. There's a lot of little incremental things, and the architect's probably better explaining that than I am, but this is going to be made for a specific purpose.
Some things like lighting or the way that the structure of the bathroom is set up so that someone can be in there to support the structure. We've done a lot of research on what the homes need in terms of the heavy dutiness of the appliances or things like that, some safe appliances so that people aren't burning themselves or things like that. So there's a lot of research that's been done on what recommendations can be made for the folks that are preparing the house for their loved one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more for the applicant?
How many units is it again?
Yeah.
23.
23.
Okay. All right.
Do you have interest? Can you fill 23?
Absolutely. There's a huge shortage of opportunities for adults to live other than in-state group homes or with their families and
Okay.
their residential homes with their families.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Should we go to I'm going to go to the public hearing portion unless there's anyone else wants to make a comment. Okay. I will open this up for the public hearing. Please come to the microphone, state your name in 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is John Porter. I live at 861 West, 1950 South. This is the neighborhood directly south of the project. Could we have the circulation plan, please? I'm here, I think it's generally a good idea. It serves a good purpose. But this is not the purpose that was discussed at the community meeting the developers required to hold. That was a completely different project that we were told about. This is a new project, has not gone through the community meeting process, and it increases the burden on our neighborhood, which we see is going to send all the traffic from this project right through our neighborhood along 800 West. The original project was 36 twin homes with retired people. Retired people don't travel as much, and they don't have 2 cars per home. A community of 23 single-family residences with families will each have at least 2 cars, maybe more. And as we know, families are going everywhere all the time. So that is going to put an unreasonable burden on our neighborhood to the south. I ask that if this project is approved, that the access to southerly route through our neighborhood be prohibited. It was not addressed in the neighborhood meeting, and it is an unfair burden to place upon our neighborhood. Also, I'd like to mention that Michaela Wagstaff of your planning department has been very helpful in providing me with information and documents, and we're very lucky to have her. Does anyone have any questions for me about our position that this access should not be permitted? Thank you all very much.
I had a quick question. Could you show us exactly on this map? Is it that red dotted line that is going to go south?
On the right.
Yes.
Yes, right there. That is what you are concerned about.
Well, yes, it goes southerly to 2000 south.
Right.
It also goes westerly right through our neighborhood to what is now a dead end. And presumably, if they get their way, it's going to feed on to 2000 south as well. So our quiet little neighborhood, which the city didn't even require streetlights for, is now going to be the major throughway for this development. And that was not even addressed at the development meeting because this is a new proposal. The only fair thing is to prohibit it in perpetuity. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Keith Nellison. I actually live in Mapleton, employed a bunch of people in Orem, but about 10 years ago, then President Holland of Utah Valley University came to me and my wife and with the idea of the autism center that's now at the Utah Valley. And he said, every time I go out in the community and I speak with people, I ask if is there anything else that we could do? And autism keeps coming up, whether it was clergy, whether it was principals, whether it was probably the mayor or whoever. And they came to us with this idea for the autism center, and now it's called the Melissa Nelson Center for Autism. And it has been a huge, huge improvement to the lives of all these kids. And all of you have either grandchildren or children or nieces or nephews that are on the spectrum. And I have a 25-year-old autistic boy who attends the Utah Autism Academy. And there they do amazing things that no one's trying to do. They figured out how to get insurance to help pay for the support of this. And now if you go out in the autism community, you ask, the question will be, what do we do with these kids? Because they're going to outlive all of us. And the choices for housing are awful. The choices we're given are give them up to the state and put them in homes. And I have friends that have had to do that because there's no options. There is nothing. The Autism Academy, what makes us unique is that they will help to provide the support. There'll be a place there, and there will be services that enable these kids, and we call them kids, but my son, if he walked in here, it's not a kid. He's a 6'3", 200-something pound person. And so we as parents are searching for places that are safe, that have a long-term strategy for our kids to live. And when we talk about traffic patterns, you don't need to worry about Colton Nellison's traffic patterns. He doesn't drive. Okay, he can't drive. He will never drive. People will say, well, why is there a garage? Part of the unique idea they have here is, how do we fund this? You know, I was approached by Kids on the Move here in your community, I don't know how many years ago. And every time you get involved with this stuff with autism, it's how do you pay for it? And we become full-time fundraisers. And that doesn't work. So their idea of having single family homes that then can go and families can get financing, right? And if this is approved, the Nellisons will buy one of these. And the idea is to see if Cole can live there long-term. So that there is is that my?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just so that there is a long-term solution, because I will die and my wife will die and he will have to leave Utah because there's nothing in the state other than we relinquish any rights we have and we make him a ward of the state. So if it's not in this place, there will never be a better place than this neighborhood because of the academy.
I'm gonna kill myself getting here. Keith Walker, I have nothing really to say about this other than a couple thoughts. Your green line, you said, is for emergency exit, right? How do you control or dictate that? Is it closed? Is it gated?
They'll be gated. Yeah.
Okay. And it makes sense. You're not going to get a traffic issue with that. The only thing he didn't have is he was worried about the depth for basements. So you don't have that. He said single floor. I don't think you want to go up. I assume they don't want to because of the situation with the kids. But that would be my recommendation, that they, I guess, maybe look at what I just heard is make sure they're on the same page. You don't know about the basements going down. You don't know about going up. I think they're trying to make them small enough to fit what they're after. And like you said, the traffic issue will be non-existent because most of them won't drive and most of them will be stuck there. So anyway, just some thoughts. It's a good idea. I just don't know if it's ready before you, I guess, is my biggest concern, if they put all the ducks in a row to get there. But I think it's probably a good idea with where it sits. Thanks.
Thank you. And for clarification, this is for the rezone to allow it to go forward to develop that plan.
Well, but my comment is that they don't have the depth or the up, and just to make sure that's all.
Thank you. I will give you a chance after we finish the public hearing. Thank you.
I think this is a worthy enough project, but still, my concern is basically traffic. Now, they may say that the autistic kids won't be driving, but if their families in those homes, they will be driving and they'll have cars and they will impact the traffic. I don't see any way that they cannot impact the traffic. And our little rural corner of Orem isn't set up to handle city traffic. They've put a signal at the corner of Geneva Road and 2000 South, which has helped a little bit. It makes us in the way, or by the way, I'm Linda Brown. I live on 2000 South. And we can get going left on Geneva Road easier now with the traffic light, but I don't see that it does a great deal other than that. I called UDOT and talked to them about access to Geneva Road, basically because Peyton Crossing Millhaven Development was denied access to Geneva Road when Peyton Crossing went in. And he told me that they were denied because of spacing restrictions. So the same thing would apply to the access for this school. And I think the school's a great idea and it has been great, but it's this development they want to do that I have concerns about. And he said, if a driveway becomes part of a city's plan, then it is an intersection. Then the same rules would apply. The spacing rules would apply. And he said there can be exceptions made if it benefits the general public. As I see it, the only public that would benefit by this would be the public they create. It would not benefit the neighborhood public. And I do think traffic is a major concern. 2000 South is a raceway. There's no speed limit. There's no patrolling. It is a racetrack, and it's night and day a racetrack. And a lot of people use 2000 South to avoid University Parkway. The lights and the traffic on University Parkway just absolutely creates a lot of traffic on 2000 South. People going to BYU and to Provo and whatever, they use 2000 South. So we get a lot of traffic. So traffic is a concern, and I can't see that putting 23 homes in the field there would not impact the traffic a lot. And I think that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sydney Dameron. I live on 849 West, 1950 South. And 1950 South is this furthest southern red dotted line. I actually think it's a really great use for the space. I think what I just wanted to share is any way that 1950 connects to either 2000 or Geneva is probably not an awesome idea, because it's such a narrow road as it is, that I think any additional traffic on that road is going to, like, if there's people parked on either side of that road, you can only get one car in between. So I would just maybe throw that out there as if there's any idea to further develop that road and create an entry point to either 2000 South or Geneva from 1950 South, that it's not going to be in anybody's best interest, whether it's the neighborhood or the people trying to get to and from. So that would be the only thing, but I think I would rather residential go there than anything else. So, and I think your project is really lovely.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bronson Dameron, and Sydney's my wife, and we live on 849 West. So I share all of Sydney's same concerns. I think that this is a great use of that space. I would love it to be residential, and autism has touched a lot of my friends and family, so I totally get that. I am concerned a little bit about the traffic patterns, most specifically in egress on 1950 South. That doesn't look like that's in the plan right now, which is great because that's so close to that intersection. And like Sydney said, that road is so narrow already. If there was an entrance from Geneva onto 1950 to create additional traffic relief, I don't think that would be great. And I wouldn't love it for our street, because then they would just be zooming up and down to get to Geneva. But it does look like the main easement and the main egress is right by the academy. And I think that's what most people will end up using. And if the development south of the academy does turn into residential, looks like it's going to, understand there will need to be another connector, and that 800 West will probably be that connector, as it runs from 2000 up. And I totally understand that. So I share the traffic concerns that John shared as well. Just my main concern is that there isn't an access from Geneva onto 1950. But overall, I think that it's a wonderful project. I would love it to be residential. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Connie Porter and I live at 1950 West. I forgot my address. I live in the development Peyton Crossing. And the only thing I would object to is access to our little community. I know this sounds like a beautiful idea, but I can't help think back of your friendly city, Orem, USA, and how it's going to impact our little neighborhood if that street goes through. So that's my only objection to it. I just think that it would really be detrimental to our little block of homes. It's like no one thinks of us. They think of all these other things, but what about us and the property we bought? And that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you.
My name is Pamela Moose, and I live on the 800 road that would be that main street, or that street that would connect from 2000 into the new neighborhood. One, I guess I'm not sure how I feel about having a connector there because of the traffic situation. It's already hard enough to get in and out of that area with the cars that, like Sister Linda Brown was saying, that go down 2000. That is becoming a really busy street. To add more, I can see that there'd be a concern. So I pause on that, supporting having a road go through that. Second of all, a little sour taste in my mouth. I feel a little bit of like bait and switch, where we were told this was going to be a 55 community, and now we're being told it's an autistic community. I think that's a fantastic idea. However, my concerns are like similar to what was brought up earlier. You can build it as an autistic community, but as they're being single dwellings, then they will eventually be sold off potentially to regular families or 55 plus. And then you add the cars, the added traffic. And yes, the autistic kids probably don't drive or might not drive, but their support staff does. How are they going to, is there a bus flight? I don't think there's a bus route that goes right to that spot. I've looked at buses to try and get myself to other places from that little area of Orem, and there's not buses. So will there be a new bus route put in for those autistic kids so that they can get from point A to point B if they're not drivers? How would that, or what other support? How do these autistic kids actually afford to buy this property so that they have these homes to live in? I'm not, like I said, I'm not opposed to the idea. I just have now all these other questions, along with the kind of the bait and switch, bad taste in my mouth feeling that goes along with it. And again, probably my biggest concern would be the traffic going in and out of that neighborhood if that road actually does go through on 800 West.
Thank you.
My name's Denise Gwilliam. Born and raised in Orem, however, now live in Draper. Yet I drive my son down to Utah Autism Academy, hour round trip in the morning and an hour round trip in the afternoon. And I didn't want to get emotional, but I guess I'm going to. As a parent, we've pretty much given our lives to these kids. Our lives are very different than most people's because of this gift. And one of the biggest concerns for us is what's going to happen to our kids when we get too old to take care of them. And it's going to happen. And we need places where they can go and they can be safe and they can be cared for, and there can be a community that will watch out for them. And the question was asked if they would be able to get people to buy these properties. There will be no problem. There are so many families that are desperate and want their children to be safe and cared for. And it's a marvelous idea. And I understand concerns about the community, and change is always difficult. And there's always the what ifs, but it will be a marvelous project and will bless lives. So many families who need that kind of support.
Thank you.
So I lived in the Orem area for like 10, 15 years now.
Can we have your name?
Actually, my
Sorry.
name's Holly.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk really fast. And I'm going to take a deep breath and then I'll talk slower. So my name's Holly and I've lived in the area for 10 years. I currently live in Vineyard. I understand parking and the issues of traffic probably more than you realize. But also I've worked at the academy and I come from a different angle of I don't have kids with autism, but I choose it every day. And because of the impact it brings. And one day I hope to raise my family in a community that allows for these individuals to impact the community. We employ 100 young kids who are 21 years old, who leave every day better people and who love their jobs. And it's because of these interactions that our community will be better. There will be potentially all of these logistical things, but if we look at the bigger picture of what we want Orem to be, I want to live in a place and I want to continue to choose to live in a place that's inclusive and that allows for other people who don't have the blessing to have this in their life every day to experience the different outlook in life and the different perspective of rubbing shoulders with these wonderful individuals who navigate a world that can be really hard for them, and have that opportunity to see them in Walmart and to see them in this neighborhood and to see that we, Orem City, chose to take a chance and to create an inclusive city for our up and coming generation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dorothy Allborn back again. We live in a little corner of Orem from 1070 South to 800 and then the mall. And people have been wanting to put streets through to the mall through our neighborhood. So I understand that. But after listening to all of this, what about speed bumps? You know, my daughter and son-in-law live in one of these developments and you go to visit them, you go really slowly because there's speed bumps all over the place. And so if anyone's worried about people zooming through their neighborhood, put in speed bumps, improve roads. I think the whole project is wonderful, but I think we're missing that everything can have a solution. We just need to have creative thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Adam. I have a son that attends Utah Autism Academy, so we are in favor of this proposal of the zoning rechange and the future development. But to address the plan right there, if people read that they don't own that, the section where that connector could go through. They're just, believe it's just outlined that it's a potential that it could go through if that section that is to the south was ever sold and developed. So currently, if it moved forward, traffic's not going to be going through that neighborhood. And then also something to keep in mind, before this development went in, and everyone that is opposed to their quality of life in that neighborhood, which I understood, I wouldn't want a bunch of traffic going through my neighborhood as well. And I understand that. But before that development went in, you have to think of the residents that were there before. And they were, I'm sure, very opposed to this going in as well. The Peyton Crossing development, they probably didn't want the traffic in that corner of Orem either, but now it's there. And people have moved in and now they're upset about their quality of life because of traffic and et cetera. So development is inevitable. This will all eventually be developed at some point. I think this is a very worthy and a very good development that will definitely benefit. Probably won't benefit our family. Excuse me, it could, but if not, I would like it to be there for other families in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bronson. I have more to say, apparently. This feels a little bit like church where you get up and you feel like you need to say something. But I first off, thank you to the Planning Commission we were here a couple of months ago, about the proposed gas station. And thank you for your help there. That meant a lot. A quote keeps coming to mind about how a civilization or a community is judged upon how it treats its weakest or most disadvantaged individuals. And I don't have kids. Sydney and I don't have any kids. But I feel pretty strongly about treating people equally. And I'm not saying that any of my neighbors here are doing that by any means. I share the same traffic concerns, but I feel like overall this is a really good thing for a lot of good people, and that it could have a really positive impact on our community. Traffic concerns aside, I think most of those hopefully will be addressed with a lot of different solutions there. But yeah, I just feel like this could be a real benefit, and to some other points, maybe that benefit hasn't been thought of as much. And yeah, I really feel like this could be a real boon to that area of Orem and change a lot of lives. And I'd like to be part of that, even if it was just to say, yeah, sure. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward for the public hearing?
My name is Scott Child. I hesitated to come up. I don't live in Orem. I live north of here. But I happen to be in a neighborhood where the community around us has grown up, and we do get some extra traffic. Is it a concern? Yes, but we deal with it. But more importantly, 3 doors down from me, I have a young man that's autistic that lives by me. He wanders the neighborhood. He's been adopted by virtually everyone in the neighborhood, but it's in an uncontrolled environment. And let me explain, when I say young man, he's in his upper 60s. He doesn't have a place to go. So he's in a home and he wanders. A community as this would be of huge value to anyone that has an adult autistic individual living with them. I support it. I think it's a phenomenal idea. I wish it was pervasive across the country, because autism is here to stay. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Okay. Last call for public comments. Is there anyone else? Okay, then we're going to close the meeting, the public hearing portion of the meeting. If the applicant would like to come forward, you can take a couple minutes.
Certainly, I'd just like to clarify a couple of points. We did have a neighborhood meeting on this some months ago. At that time, we were proposing twin homes. We received a lot of comments back during that hearing. It's always been a autism-friendly neighborhood, but we had a number of people suggest that they would be more comfortable with single-family housing, and they thought the density was too high. We cut the density back by a little bit over a third and went to the single family. Because this is a PRD, and you guys know this, I don't know everybody else is, we don't get to have a second story. Most of these units are not going to be able to have a basement. This is not going to attract a large family because there's just limited space on a ground floor that can be utilized. The last thing I'd like to say is the property separating us from the neighborhood to the south is owned by Mr. Switzer. He's been a great guy to work with, been able to work out an easement to have a very safe entrance coming off of Geneva Road. However, the property is currently being used as a farm to supply Tabitha's Way. And that's his intention, to keep it that way permanently. We have talked to him about the possibility of making that connection to the south. He's absolutely opposed to it. Never know what's going to happen in the future, but it's not going to happen now. Anyway, that's clarification. Thank you.
And sorry, one final thing from me. I just really wanted to emphasize how much I appreciate the willingness of our neighbors to consider this importance of the inclusiveness of this and the need for us to work together as a community to make solutions good for both of us. We definitely want to be good neighbors, and we want to create good neighborhood relationships, and just really appreciate the ability that we have to work with folks in Orem to make it family friendly for everyone, including families like mine. So thank you.
I'm going to start with some questions for Sam. It involves traffic. You know it's going to involve you.
Yes, I figured that was coming.
So as we've heard, ingress and egress into this neighborhood is of concern, and the connection between this potential PRD into the neighborhood to the south. Could you speak to that? Why is it there? What's the expectation? Why does the city even call it out?
So initially, when the Peyton Crossing development came through, to be very frank, about half of that development would not have happened if we did not master plan for that street connection to the north. Right now, the way our code is written is that the maximum length on a residential cul-de-sac is 650 feet. Obviously, when you look at Peyton Crossing, it exceeds that, but that's because we looked at it as likely this development's going to happen. Once this happens, it's going to be a catalyst. There's going to be future development. We'll have other connections being made so that we can go ahead and have circulation, understanding that there is going to be some increase in traffic, but it's really minimal when you look at the big picture. Also, that connection would provide connection for utilities. Water can circulate through, and you're looking at fire flows and things like that. Understanding too, for this project to happen, you can only have 2 hydrants on an 8-inch line unless it can circulate through. They're coming through. They're asking for this rezone. This is a conceptual plan, but when site plan comes through, if they don't have some sort of a loop, they likely won't be able to do what they're proposing here. They might be able to work with Mr. Switzer, and they can go ahead and have a utility line connection. But there's some other things that are going to be in place when they come through for site plan, which will come back to Planning Commission. Traffic, though, I mean, those are part of the things. Is we're trying to master plan this and make it so people can get access, to other streets, so they can go ahead and circulate through, so they can go ahead and enjoy some of the amenities here in the city of Orem. Geneva Road is busy, but it's probably not going to be as busy as 2000 South. A connection to the south, they likely could be able to make a left a lot easier to go to Nielsen's Grove. Making a left out on Geneva Road might be a little more time consuming. It's not to say that it can't happen, but I mean, there's reasons why we have done things and why we plan them. So that's why that stub road is there, so we can have future connections, and then people can go ahead and circulate through and hopefully not have much delay when they're trying to get throughout the city. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
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 Is there something else I need that I didn't address?
Specifically, I mean, to be clear right now, there will be no connection to the neighborhood south. It is just a future planning stub right there that you would be creating.
Right. So what we're saying is that we were allowing for this whole development to come through. You're going to have a secondary access, which is the emergency access. Likely when the property to the south develops, then they wouldn't have to have that emergency access. The school wouldn't have to worry about having the Knox boxes or some sort of access for fire to go ahead and drive through there. But we do need to have some sort of a secondary access in case of an emergency.
So to just say it back, just making sure I've got this clear, it's just a plan in the future. So there's a secondary exit to get rid of the other one when it finally does connect at some point in the future.
Right. And then it provides a plan for that property to the south to develop too, because we try and have that happen so that someone isn't landlocked, someone is coming in and maybe they have a different idea. We want to have the plan that's happening gives people an option to see what's going to happen, because we wouldn't want to have a road going down the middle and then a long cul-de-sac here. It wouldn't have been a very good plan. So we try and do it so that people have options when they go to develop their property.
Okay. And then shifting to a slightly other question, one of the comments had talked about UDOT and Geneva Road and the exit onto Geneva Road from the school that would be the main entrance into this. Is there already a driveway there currently
For the school,
for the
yes.
school?
Yes.
And so what they'd be doing is widening it and straightening it up to Geneva?
So what would happen if you go back to that site plan is they're going to make that access, it's going to be more of a road. It's going to come in at a 90 degrees, and then they'll also create a new access for the school as part of it. And that's why they need to have a sliver of that property to the south in order to make that connection work. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, just for clarification about understanding. So there's already cars coming in and out of there.
Yes.
Set times throughout the day because of the existence of the school.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if I can make I know there was some concern in that circulation diagram was not necessarily completely true. There would be no reason for anyone from this development to go down 1950 because it is purely going to be a cul-de-sac. It will never connect out to Geneva Road, and it won't connect down into that proposed gas station if that were to happen. Likely, if anything were to happen, either the gas station is going to go in, whether or not city council approves that, or there would be the option for that to loop upon itself and there would be a residential development in there, but that there would never be a connection at 1950 out to Geneva Road and or to 2000 South either.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. One other question I had, there is currently no development agreement in place between the school and the property owner to the south. Is that correct? You can answer. We just need you to speak so it's on the record. So.
We have a written agreement between us. It's I guess a gentleman's agreement at this time. In order to make the formal agreement, we need to, first of all, know we have zoning, and then we have to do the final engineering. We need to have an accurate legal description of the property. We need to have that triangle come out onto the street. We're waiting to get all the engineering comments back so that we know exactly what we're doing. Development agreements are a mystery to do. We hate to have to do it twice or three times because it hasn't been right. But hopefully the staff provides you with a letter that Mr. Switzer wrote, and he's agreeable to work with us on. He's been very good to work with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just asking because staff has recommended that we have that in place. So I'm just trying to understand what the situation is currently.
Yeah, we just want to be able to have an accurate legal description and everything in place to finalize that agreement. And of course, he doesn't want to do the agreement if we're not approved to have a project.
Yeah.
Like a lot of us old people, and particularly who've been involved in farming, we're terrified of giving up something and find out that it went to the city or something else. So yeah, we're trying to do it right. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay. All right, Commission.
I have a question, something that I haven't heard. I mean, I think we all love the idea, that goes without saying. I am more concerned about protecting the autistic residents of these homes, and I haven't heard anyone address that. If there's 23 homes there, they don't drive. I don't think the traffic is going to increase because of them. But if we build those roads connecting to them, I am concerned that this brilliant little community will, in the next 10 years, meld into just regular homes because there'll be subdivision all around it. And I would like to ask Sam, why can we not keep it as a protected community? Because the average family isn't going to be trying to buy these if you have to drive through the school to get into that community. I think it's also a way of protecting the autistic people living there, because I think we all love autistic kids or adults, but they don't have great judgment. And I think to be able to protect them, to stop cars driving into their community would be more concerning to me than anything else, because even though Mr. Switzer's not selling right now, as we sit here, we can tell you it's only time until maybe his son does or something. So we anticipate that will also fill up with homes. And I would like to do something to protect that for the autistic people.
I appreciate your willingness to look at what the needs are for these individuals. And as you might imagine, the spectrum is quite broad, and we're not reserving it for one end of the spectrum that doesn't drive or another. But I think it's important to note too that the state is mandating us moving away from intentional, like it has to be, or it will be considered an ICF or a large group home. So we want our adults with autism to have choice to live there because it is in their community. But we anticipate that because there's such a long list of parents who need this service, that they will not only purchase a home, live in the home, want to sell to someone who is, but we don't want to make this a battle with the state that this is a group home setting. And also with the services that we offer at the academy, we want to teach them to be safe in any community so that eventually they can be a part of any community wherever they might live. And so there's a lot of instruction that goes on between the academy and those living in these homes. We would imagine in terms of teaching and training for budget discussions and how do I drive and when do I drive and can I date and do these things. And we will be looking to their parents and caregivers to want to participate in those trainings so that they can be safe in any community that they choose to live.
Thank you.
So Sam, do we have any other options? You know, in terms, do we have to put both of those roads where there'll be two accesses onto 2000 South? What other options would we have?
I mean, there's a lot of options. I mean, you know, if you have those folks that live there, or you have people visiting, you want to give people different options to access there. If something were to happen, there's an accident out front, to have multiple access points is kind of a safety concern. With the stub to the east, you could have further access. I think there's been some discussion of the parcels there to the east coming in and doing some development as well. And I mean, I understand that you want to protect them, but in that same breath, I think we want to be able to provide different points of access so we could get someone there to help them out as well. To make that one big long cul-de-sac, and I understand that. Just give me a sec. I too have a very close friend who has an autistic son, and MacArthur is a great kid, and you want to be able to give these kids, adults, the option to get to know the area. To the gentleman's comment, you really can't confine these kids, and you want them to feel as normal as possible. And the worst thing that you could do when I think of MacArthur is to think that you can confine him, because you can't. And you want him to explore a neighborhood. And I feel for you folks at Peyton Crossing, because when I first saw MacArthur on my front porch singing, it was a little different. I'll put it that way. But there's no malintent with these folks. If anything, these neighbors will want to protect these kids. So to think that they need protection really isn't going to be an issue. They are going to be protected, and these neighbors will embrace these kids. And I don't know how much more I could say about it, but that's truly what's going to happen. And I know that traffic is a concern, and I understand that. But it is going to be a lot more than what you're experiencing now. But in the scheme of things, it's really not. You're going to enjoy the fact that you have a connection to go visit these folks, that they can come and visit you. These folks are going to be part of your Sundays, and you're going to want to have that access, and you're going to see that those folks are going to need to have access to get in and out, and for people to move. And I know it's a common concern with traffic, but it's really not going to be that big of an issue. But yeah, sorry, I got a little emotional.
It's okay. Thank you, Sam. Does the applicant want to say anything further?
I don't know what the commissioner was suggesting. Almost sounded like maybe some way to block the road in some way. We don't allow private roads in Orem anymore. We did in the old days, but we don't anymore. This is a public street. I think the thing that's going to restrict traffic coming through there I think you're going to come through if you're there to visit somebody, but it doesn't go anywhere. You might make a wrong turn once, you're not going to do it twice. I think the very proximity of where we are, isolated into a corner of Orem, but particularly having the luxury of having the academy there, this is probably the best situation we can find. Nothing's perfect. I wish to heck I could find perfect. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've never found perfect yet. This is as good as we can find. And I think it's got so many more strong points than negative points. I think we need to move ahead with it if you're so inclined.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Jim, do you have any comments or?
I just wanted to express a concern that some said they felt that they were hoodwinked, that what was initially perceived to be what was going to be built there is now quite different than what they had thought. So I don't know how that resulted, and I'm curious what.
The neighborhood meeting that we had was held at the Autism Center at the Academy. It has always been an autism-friendly community. Again, we listen to comments that the neighbors make. And we had the two most pronounced comments that we had. Obviously, there was concerns about traffic that were raised again tonight. But the others were that it was too many. And we reduced the density by a little over a third. The other one is there seemed to be a preference for some of the people there that we have single family as opposed to attached twin homes. We tried to make that adjustment. I don't think it's a matter of trying to do a bait and switch. We've reduced the density. We've changed the style of housing to something that's more accommodating.
So you're saying
we're trying to react to what the public has asked for.
Yeah, you're saying that you heard what they had to say, you've reacted to it in a manner you believe that is fair and equitable and yet achieves the goal that you're looking for here.
I think that's what we've tried to accomplish. Yeah. Typically, if you're doing some kind of a switch or changing size and number, and we've reduced everything. We've tried to accommodate what we were asked.
So I'm approaching the category of an old folk. Some said I'm well into it. And the idea that they drive less, I suppose that's true. And I don't know, John, you had stated, I don't remember if it was 60 dwellings that were going to be there before. And now it's down to 23.
It was 33.
Okay. I don't know that that would be, from my life's experience, I don't know that that would really be terribly impactful. I live in a neighborhood in Orem where I objected to a development that put 52 homes in. And I was concerned about the increased traffic. And honestly, I've not seen much of a difference, surprisingly. I'm almost embarrassed to admit that because I'm wrong in what I perceive to be the case. But anyway, I surely appreciate, as a member of the commission, the sincere expressions that have been made. And I think collectively we all have a concern about this autistic and seemingly growing community, and to have a development just in immediate proximity to the school, it almost seems like it was heaven sent to me.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to follow on that as far as legal requirements for notifications is changing the plan from what was publicly portrayed. Does that meet the requirements if they come before us with something completely different than what was given to the public?
In this situation, I think it meets the legal requirements of the meeting. The notice they have that was sent out, anything that's smaller, less dense, all of those things still meets the legal requirements. So there's not a legal requirement to send them back for another neighborhood meeting.
I do have a concern about the density. This is the start of filling in some of these farmlands. And so if we start out on the wrong foot, we really screw up a whole neighborhood before we even get going. So I am a little concerned. There's no protections that this stays in this venue like we've discussed. So in 10, 15 years, it could be all single family homes. It could be all a bunch of students. We don't know where it'll go. So I do find the density a little concerning because it is going to impact the traffic in the neighborhood over time. And it's not the last lot in the area, it's the first lot in the area. And we're starting out really heavy. So I don't know if Helena's talked about kind of more restrictive, but that doesn't seem, we've got stuff going to the east, a road that's already going to the east, which will open up to more development and more impaction. There's lots across the south. And are we building the infrastructure that will support all that traffic, all those houses and all those neighborhoods? I don't know that we've answered that question yet. So
By infrastructure, do you mean like, will there be creating other roads to connect this? Or
well,
will this be
they
only
will
through?
be as things get developed over time, as we've talked about. And I'm just concerned, like this is the first Lego brick, and we're covering half the area with a giant, 8x8.
So can I address that just really quick? So the density on this project based on the reduction is 4.8 units per acre. The zone allows up to 7. A typical R8 subdivision is going to be just over 4. So it's very comparable to an R8 density.
So okay, so it's right between an R8 and a 6.5.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any more specific questions or just that's what you're pondering? Okay. Jerry, would you like to say anything? Do you have any questions? Okay. Anything else?
I have no further questions. No.
All right, so we're going to take a few minutes to discuss this because there's actually several parts to this. There is the front part, the PO changed to professional office zone. That's one part of it. And then we have the PRD zone. And I want to clarify something before we go much further. We are a recommendation body to the city council. So what we're doing here tonight is as citizens of Orem looking at this and saying, hey, is this in the best interest? And we're making a recommendation to city council. So this will, just like the gas station issue, will also go before the city council in a few weeks' time. It will be notified again when that will be, and they will make the final determination. So what tonight is just what we want to recommend, what we feel in our capacity here as commissioners to recommend to the city council. So just keep that in mind as we're discussing this. It's not over tonight. It's not the end. It's just what we're recommending. Okay, so like I said, there's the first half that's the PO, and then there's the back half that's the PRD. So everyone's just staring at me.
That's because you're talking.
Then I'll stop talking. No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think, am I getting the sense that I think we're fine with the PO? That I mean, I would make a motion on the professional office zone to move forward with a positive recommendation for that. As for the PRD zone, where are we at? What do we want to put forth a motion and talk about it?
For me, I don't really have a problem with the PRD zone. I have a problem with the roads. And I don't know how to delineate that because I really believe this will just meld into other single family homes that are there. And I really would like to protect it for the autistic community. And I feel like if we put too many connector roads, it's going to be very delicious to people who would like even a small home. So I don't know how to protect the autism subdivision while sticking with the master plan, which I don't think works for an autistic community.
I am answering your question, asking a question about your question. Sorry. Gary, with the CCNRs at CNC, how binding are those going to be in terms of the community and the housing that's within the community?
Well, CC&Rs are binding on those in that community who sign them. Violations of those CCNRs depends on how strong the enforcement entity takes it and whether they actually do things. So it would really depend on the nature of the CCNRs. And the structure is there's going to be a homeowners association or things like that, if they're going to be in CCNRs with the autism center itself or not. So there's quite a bit that could be done. I just, really don't have, I can't really give an answer more than just kind of a theoretical high level approach to it.
Yeah, that's why I was asking for a better clarification of what the CCNRs would do to protect, but that would only be protecting the homes within these 23 homes we'd be discussing. So. Oh, great.
Madeline, if I could
Yeah.
just offer some food for thought. So a lot of times when you don't have street connections, you actually you are limiting some traffic, but you're creating other traffic. If Jason could go back to that picture of the site there. So if Mr., I think his first name was Al, I can't remember his last name, were to develop that piece in between and put those single family homes in, and let's pretend the road doesn't connect to the north. Well, if, for example, children live there or neighbors that are friends with those that live in Peyton Crossing, the only way to go from house to house is then to get into your car, drive around the block and drive to that house. So you're creating a trip for that visit. Whereas if there's a road connection, you can walk to your friend's house. So connectivity in neighborhoods is important, and having places to walk so that you don't have to drive a car everywhere you go. So yes, you will get some traffic impacts from the north, from the neighborhood to the north, but the more outlets that you can create in a neighborhood, the more the traffic is dispersed. So some of the neighbors in Peyton Crossing may find that it's easier to go actually to the north and out to Geneva the other way than to deal with the light at 2000. Neighborhood I live in, I have 5 exits out of it, and traffic is dispersed very nicely, and everyone can walk the loop around the neighborhood and talk to their neighbors and get to know their neighbors. So when you don't have a lot of connections, you lose those personal connections that you have with people too. We try to plan this area so that the streets do have connections. So there are multiple options to get out. There's release valves. There's, in the event of an emergency, like Sam said, that police and fire can respond efficiently in a manner that they can get to a site quicker than going around the block and entering in. We just went through this on Apple Bud, if you recall, up by Cascade Elementary, where they wanted 2 dead-end cul-de-sacs meeting each other instead of connecting a neighborhood loop. It's always difficult. It's always a challenge. I grew up on 1600 North, 1 house off, 280 West, dead-ended at 16th North and didn't connect right next to my house growing up. They put the road through. Word Perfect was built. Traffic on 16th North went crazy. But, it's just the way you want to plan a city, is you want to have street connections. Also, if Commissioner Kleinlein is so, to her point of the roads, you can make that recommendation to the council. If you're not in favor of this project, you can give a positive or a negative recommendation, but you can also add on to that you're not in favor of the road connection. And that's an option to move it forward as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And some of your arguments were very good, but I also have a disabled child who is now an adult. And unfortunately, she doesn't have friends. Sometimes in this community, they're not understood, so that's why keeping them together, that would be fabulous.
Okay. One other thing before we make the motion is the issue over the development agreement. And if we want it in place, how does the city still recommend? Do you still recommend that we try and include it?
I'll let Gary talk about that, but the gentleman's agreement is not really enforceable.
Yes.
So that's, I guess, our issue is that we would prefer to have that. It's chicken or the egg, right? Which one do you have first? And that's, I guess, the question.
Okay.
Yes, a gentleman's agreement that they have that wouldn't bind the property owner to the south to commit to putting that, giving up that property so that the road can go through. And I understand wanting legal descriptions and things like that, But if that doesn't happen, then this project can't happen unless the road changes and a lot more impacts to the project. And so in going forward, it's always nice to know that you can have that the road that is being proposed is actually feasible and can work. And all we would need really are legal descriptions of both overall parcels. The Autism Center parcels that exist today and the property to the south. We don't necessarily need the precise legal description of the road at this point.
Okay. I think for moving forward, I want to propose, I don't know how exactly to propose this, but I'd like to split this into two motions. One for the rezone for the professional office and one for the PRD. Is that possible?
Well, you have the item in front of you.
Mhm.
And so with that, a motion can be made that includes two parts or more aspects to it, but a motion needs to be made for the one item.
For all of it together?
Yes.
Okay, we can't split it out into two motions?
Well, you can have two aspects to the motion.
Okay. So we could say a positive for one half and hypothetically a negative for the other half?
Yes.
Okay.
Or negative for both.
Both or positive
yeah.
for both or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay.
You can split it even though it's starting out as one thing, because if we only approved one, the other sits in limbo as a nothing.
Well, you'd be voting on the different.
Because neither one of them is an OS5 by itself.
Yeah, you do want to make a recommendation either for positive or negative, right? Or if
Right.
it's a split vote 3-2, then it would go forward as a negative.
Well, I just mean if we were to split the decision on two different votes, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to ask, but basically we have to say like what we want each have to be, and then it's one vote for this particular. I'm getting that right, correct?
Well, they have a request to take a parcel and create, what is it, PO zoning on the western half and the PRD on the eastern half of it. And you can make a recommendation that the council approve the PO zone, but not approve PRD on the back half, or you could do it the opposite.
But it's still one vote in the end. It will be one
In
vote.
the
on
end,
the
it's one recommendation because there's one item in front of you.
Okay.
And with that, and you could make as a part of your motion that you recommend that to the council not to allow the street to go through, or, just different aspects of whatever it is that your recommendation ultimately is to the council, but it is one item and one motion on that item.
And this has been one thing we've gotten stuck on previous meetings. Sorry, this is really technical, people. Like, appreciate your patience through this. Can we discuss what we want to be in the motion before we make the motion, or does somebody have to make a motion and then we discuss it?
Usually somebody makes a motion and then there is discussion on the motion.
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay. I make a motion that the planning commission make a positive recommendation to the city council to amend Article 22-5-3A in the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning a portion of the property that fronts Geneva Road from the OS5 zone to the PO zone, approximately 4.83 acres, and the remaining property from the OS5 zone to the PRD zone, approximately 4.79 acres, and amending Appendix KK of the Orem City Code for the property located generally at 1875 South Geneva Road.
I second it.
Oh, because I think it needs to have the pending. Because now we'd have to vote that down to do another one, wouldn't we?
Well, you have to ask for a second. If there's no second. the
He just
motion fails.
seconded it.
Second.
Okay, so now there's discussion on the motion.
Okay.
And so typically you start with the person who made the motion, give everybody on the planning commission opportunity to comment if they want, and then allow the person who made the motion the last word, and then you vote on the motion.
Okay. You get first bid. Go for it.
Well,
What do you want to
I
say?
made the motion. I think it's a great idea. I understand the concerns of traffic. This is the first evidently in that neighborhood for development. Our city planning director says that the size of the lots, or the density of the property is actually less than what's the average in Orem.
In a PRD. that's
In a
correct.
PRD zone. And I think this is a wonderful idea. The proximity of the property to the school, the enclosed facility where the people that are in these 23 residences all have similar interests. And I well understand and appreciate the fact that perhaps the property at some point will be sold to someone that's not of an interest, has an interest in supporting autistic concerns. But so what? I mean, I don't know, that makes a great deal of difference, candidly, in my mind. And it's apparent to me that the developer, Mr. Washburn, I guess you're the lead man in that effort. I don't know that you are, but you've tried to be responsive to the concerns of those that reside there. I just think it's a win-win proposition, and yet I do understand the concerns of the traffic. Anyway, that's just some sentiments that I have.
Thank you, Helena.
Yeah, my vote would be nay at this point, but not because of the PRD zone. It's because of the traffic. And I think looking a little bit further down the road, as I said earlier, I am afraid that this would just meld into a larger subdivision that will come as land gets sold. And I would like to do more to really try and keep that as an autistic community.
Thank you. Mike?
I largely agree with Helena's thoughts on this. If it's just going to grow, then the density I think it's not the right fit to start with, if it's just going to mold into just general housing at this point. So if we either take additional constraints to preserve that into what is being brought forward, or I just don't think that it's a great choice.
Jerry?
I think it's a great use of this property, and I can't think of anything that could go on that property that would affect traffic less than what they're proposing. It could be a lot worse.
Thank you. I have zero problem with them changing it to a professional office so that they have more ability to develop and redevelop that land as they want to build out the school and stuff. The PRD in and of itself, I'm fine with. It is a wonderful thing that is necessary. We all have people we know that have autism, some closer to us than others. My only concern is that I would like to see the development agreement as part of before the planning, before it goes to the city council. That is part of the motion. I'd like to see that. And I am not opposed to saying that we make a recommendation to look at the roads for the city council to make a decision if we want to do that.
So one option at this time is you've talked about the development agreement. You could ask the motion maker, James, if he would be willing to amend his motion to recommend that there's a development agreement before it gets to council. And if he agrees to that and the second agrees to that, then that becomes a part of the motion.
So the development agreement, would you define just what you are looking for in that?
Yeah, just that the development agreement with the property owner to the south be signed so that it's not just a gentleman's agreement, it's part of the record. That there's an agreement that they can to complete that road, because they pretty much have to complete that road onto Geneva and that little slice of land, and making sure that it's clearly and legally binding on the property owner to the south to be able to have that portion of land.
I don't see that's necessary, really. So I'm not going to change my recommendation. Obviously, two have voted against what I've recommended anyway, so.
They haven't voted yet.
So it's not,
They've
it's
expressed.
not carrying the day, so it doesn't change my thinking, however. I think this, I mean, the land's going to be developed at some point, and to go in now and to define just where every road's going to be, it's just not feasible that's going to happen. I mean, we're looking at this. It seems to me that it's warranted on its own merit without any further requirements being put in place.
That's fair. So, okay. So then is there anything else you wanted to say? Because you get the last say.
I'll think of it later when I'm home.
Okay, then we move for a motion, right? I mean, for voting.
Call the question and
yeah.
vote.
Sorry. Oh yeah, we're getting technical on the Roberts rules here. So I guess I'll call the question. Mike. Oh, you get to say yay or nay at this point?
Just say aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye, and I'm voting for the person next to me that's not here.
So that's 3-2.
So it would go, yeah, with a negative neutral recommendation.
Neutral? Okay. Oh, because we don't have 4.
Right.
That's right.
So there was no it basically goes without a recommendation.
But will they explain why? Because I wouldn't want the city council to think that, speaking
so
for
they'll
Mike, that we're against the.
They get a copy of the minutes and
Okay.
they do read the minutes.
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
And you can show up and give public comment too.
So this will most likely, just for those here, the second city council meeting in August, which would be, I'm not sure of the date, but so not the first meeting, but the second. We'll obviously send out notices again to the neighbors and let them aware of the public meeting, but
It should be August 22nd.
22nd.
Oh, wait, I can't read. August 15th.
I think it is the 22nd, actually. Anyway, we'll send out
Later in
notices.
August.
It is not
Those
the first
dates were
meeting in
close
August,
on
but
the
the second.
calendar.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to item 4.1, approval of the meeting minutes from June 21st. Is there any issues with those? For those who were here? Okay. Then make a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the June 21st, 2023 meeting.
I second that motion.
Okay, Jim?
Aye.
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 Okay, and then motion to adjourn. Oh, Ryan, do you have anything to say?
Darn it, I had half an hour of stuff prepared, but just appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time. I know this is an unpaid position and it's not easy for you, but I appreciate the passion you bring to it and the time you put into it. And we're just grateful for that you care and that you're here to help us out. And just thank you. And hope you have a great weekend, great Pioneer weekend and celebrating. And we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone got up and left, but I wanted to say thank you. It was really nice to have public input on these matters. So anyway, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Mike?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. And Michaela is awesome.
Okay.
Property maps. This is our in-house development tracking system. I'm always trying to check out the properties. That's so unfortunately.
What time is it?
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. So these are water lines.